Hey everybody, P.A. Turner, executive producer and host of your Break It Down show, bringing you today's show with my friend Ben Biddick. Ben is a busy guy. So Ben joined the Army after 9/11 and became a combat medic and saw action and check all the blocks there. Okay. Then he got out and became a state-level emergency manager. Okay, check all the blocks there. He also, along the way, met and wrote a book with a guy named Adam Greenberg, who was hit in the back of the head with the pitch in Major League Baseball while at the plate and battled back through all of this adversity and trauma to get back onto the field with an incredible story. So they wrote that book called Get Up. But also, he works at Ideal State Consulting as a certified mental health integrative medicine provider. But he's also a podcast producer. So he does a lot of things. Also a husband, also a father. So he is constantly active in terms of helping people out and getting through trauma. And that's the biggest thing. So as he and I talk, a lot of what we get into is the COVID response, taking our unique military experience, like just the day-to-day living under the COVID shelter-in-place order. It's like being deployed, like what day is it? Well, what meal was served today? Oh, lasagna. Lasagna's Thursday. I mean, that kind of thing. That must feel familiar to you guys. So being deployed, just the adversity that's always thrown at you as someone who's in a combat zone. We're in a conflict zone right now, for sure. I mean, all of this uncertainty causes us to act in different ways. So I think it's a great conversation as we get into what it takes to get through these kinds of trauma. Like normally the trauma would be, just regular run-of-the-mill trauma, which is impossible to get through. But now you add in this COVID thing, and maybe you stack COVID with your regular trauma. How do you get through that? Ben is a fantastic resource for that. If you go into the show notes, and as he does so many things, just keep clicking on the link fest. You will get a chance to buy the book. If you love baseball, the story of Adam Greenberg is fantastic. You're going to love that. I guess the main thing I'm going to say is go to the show notes and click there. Hey, and by the way, going to the show notes and clicking helps out a lot. When you go to someone else's website, Google picks that up and they see that our website is relevant to theirs and we get recommended together and it helps out. It's a way to support the show. Always when you buy a book, make sure you rate and review. That's a big thing. I'm working on doing more of that my own self. And so hopefully I will hold myself accountable to do that. A lot of things. I'm still waiting on shirts. I'm waiting on some artwork stuff that has to come back from the shirt provider. That should be back soon. And then I'm actually working on a all new together shirt. So that will be exciting when that comes out. Hey, save the brave, savethebrave.org. You know what to do. Here comes Ben Biddick, everybody.
Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This is
East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Marotta.
This is Stuart Copeland. This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
My name is Ben Biddick, and you're listening to the Break It Down show.
Yeah, I've got Ben on. Sometimes we talk podcaster to podcaster, and of course that is true in this case, Ben, but you're also a very current event relevant guest. One, you're a combat medic from the Army. You've deployed to Iraq and you've seen what true crisis looks like. But you also are not only, in the medical field, but you also focus on resilience. So it seems like by accident, we have great timing.
Yeah, I've worked in service-oriented fields for a long time. And focusing on emergency management, you can kind of see as our societies continue to converge and we get more and more connected with technology and there's a lot of challenges that happen. The speed of our communication is changing with internet-based technologies. And so when things go wrong, they can go severely wrong. We have a lot of things going on with our environment or natural disasters, et cetera. So basically, largely what I like to focus on is the biggest gift I could think of to give others and to find meaningful service myself after military service and a variety of other things was to serve people in developing resilience, because that is one attribute that we all need more today than ever, in my opinion.
One of the things that the emergency management community does focus on is resilience, and they often talk in terms of stakeholders. Oftentimes I notice that no one is holding the stakes for us, the regular citizens out there, right? So the stakeholder is, county fire and university and all that kind of thing. But we often lose, and the Army does this too, we often lose sight of the critical stakeholder, the individual person in their house. Like everything is geared top down. Why is that, man?
Yeah, I think it's just people get overwhelmed. There's so much information, and sometimes we get focused on, well, we need to take some sort of action, but largely, I think the biggest problems, us as a culture, as a large culture, where we do have a disconnect or where we have a blind spot is truly to look at what is the common person's experience and how valuable is each human life. So that means everybody. So it doesn't just mean, this category of people or this situation. We lose sight of that basic reality that each person, what is their experience, and that formulates powerful responses, because we're looking at people and we're not separated by all these different levels of government or the incident command system, et cetera, et cetera. We have to look at exactly what you're saying is what happens to the family that is in there, that they don't have enough food, or they're sitting in their car, and it's a natural disaster outside. What is the operational reality on the ground, and how can we get to them? So getting out all the scenario-driven stuff, and we have all these things that can go on. We can get overwhelmed by information. We can get overwhelmed. We can use technology and be excited about using the latest app or the latest technology. But really, is it affecting the common person that's out there in it? I know with you, we talked about the ground truth reality.
Yeah.
We talked about that hardcore, egoless look at what's truly happening, because there you find your solutions. And if you distract yourself by all the cool stuff in the EOC, if you distract yourself with your own ego, if you distract yourself, somebody blowing sunshine up your rear end because they have an agenda, you distract yourself from the real impact, which is saving people's lives, is making things happen rapidly to improve crisis, helping people deal with the psychological stress of crisis. Because that's the opportunity. That's a profound opportunity to really communicate to people that you care about them. That is the ultimate of that.
Yeah.
It's the largest look at it, the macro look of, look, you have an opportunity right now to not just save lives, but comfort people in crisis, but give them an idea that this world is not a horrific and terrible place, that actually we have the power to, even in adversity, have tremendous resilience and actually thrive through it. That's one thing that I'm focusing on. I have a Thrive Through It campaign at getupnation.com. We're really focusing on, if you're in crisis, if you're desperate, think about how powerful you are, how powerful the common man is sitting in his house, the common woman is sitting in his house with their kids. Don't wait for government to save your life.
Yeah, you're right about the whole the resilience and taking charge of that stuff. I still want to stay with the EOC and the EM folks, because there are some critical lessons here. Because for all of the look, I love the EM world. One of my best friends is a national level expert in emergency management, so I come pretty well versed in it. The default to fear. I mean, just think about this. Declaring a state of emergency sounds terrifying. And really what it is a procedural move to unlock assets that otherwise are held in reserve, or powers that are checked, because we don't need that service all the time. Instead of saying we're going to readiness level 2 or response level 2 or whatever it is, it's a state of emergency. And the same thing too, like with folks in Florida. When they shelter in place, if there's people, or maybe in southern Louisiana, if there's people that are more prepared to shelter in place, I don't know who they are. They are community resilient, and they don't need a lot of external help because they know what it's like to have no power for 2 weeks. So I want to talk a little bit about that, like that fear base, because when I hear the WHO and the NIH and the CDC talking, they talk always from a point of fear. And honestly, for me, makes me tamp down what they say and go, they're overreacting. I understand why they do it. It's a big problem and they want to get ahead of these things. But the fear-based messaging and the inability to connect with the ground truth, it's a real problem in that industry.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the fact of the matter. That the last thing that you need is fear. I talked about this a little bit recently about real leadership in a time of crisis. It's a calm acknowledgement that comes from understanding the ground truth, gathering solutions from the finest minds, the evidence-based minds, the scientific minds, the subject matter experts, gathering that and then deploying. This can be an extremely satisfying line of work because you are actually, like we said, not just saving a life, but actually helping people thrive through adversity. So when times are good, their quality of life goes through the roof because they're thinking of that adversity. They're thinking with confidence. They're thinking with recollection of the positive experience where they bonded with their neighbors that they never knew before crisis, and that they came to a point where they empowered each other together to overcome the obstacle. And then you have, people at these high level organizations that they don't think about the crisis in regard to how it affects people. They may think about it from their expertise of weather, et cetera, et cetera. And then a bunch of lawyers come in and be like, well, troubleshooting all well, what do you do? And if you don't get the announcement out, and if you don't do that, and people just are not comfortable with having their normalcy, their routine, and their schedule, the things that they grow used to, the things that they take for granted. They're not used to that getting shaken up. And when that happens, you have a choice of how to respond. You can either respond with, the best of this is that's an opportunity. I'm excited. The world is changing. I'm alive during it. No matter what happens during this is an exciting time to be alive. I can do so much good. And it's unprecedented experience to be involved in. And how are we going to get through this? You can look at it with that mindset, or you can look at it like you get caught in that anxiety. And anxiety is largely looking at a future reality, something that has not happened yet, that could happen, that's frightening, that about 90% of the time our minds freak out and create something terrible that could happen. We spend all our time being scared of that, and we miss the present moment where that's not happening. And so largely to be that present moment focused, largely to look at it with calm, serene leadership and a refusal to allow anxiety, fear to be poured out from our expressions, especially if you're in leadership, especially if you're a high level leader of an organization that people are depending on to give sound judgment, sound reports, sound data. It's absolutely imperative that people don't give in to fear.
Yeah. And this is really easy to say. There's folks that actually, have a higher level problem than others, whether you're, are more seasoned citizens staring at the barrel of COVID, or, your homeless status is a lot less than mine. There's people that really need some direct influence. And I wish we were able to better flex resources to those folks, like when the hurricane comes, when the wildfire comes, and there's a home that cares for, our seasoned, I like using seasoned citizens. That's terrifying stuff. And it's something where like, hey, I have capacity right now. I'm not a public resource, but let me go help, just because sometimes you just need bodies on scene, and you only need them for 2 hours. But if we can get these beds out of here and over to this thing and in this truck, and then boom, on to the next thing. But it's we're not quite at that level. The other thing I wanted to comment on is this alert system that we have.
Yeah,
it's getting better. Okay, let me say that. But like my phone, my number is registered up in the northern part of California, like really northern California. And so I get all of their alerts. And many times these alerts literally have nothing, like what am I supposed to do with this alert, And then when the fire comes, I don't get an alert for that area. I'm like, well, how can it be that I got the old lady is lost alert? And so it numbs you to these things. I'm like, oh, what is going on? Oh, this is a crisis. Everybody must know about it. My pocket is vibrating. And I look and I'm like, what? And then legitimately, like, here comes the fire that's going to kill hundreds of people, and never got a peep. Talk about that a little bit, man.
Yeah. So emotional intelligence and mental, like awareness of mental health, like there's a huge stigma about mental health.
Right.
The big tough guy is going to cowboy up and say, I'm just going to suck it up and deal with all this post-traumatic stress by drinking it away. And I'm tough enough to handle it all and all this stuff. True strength comes from that resilient mindset where you do experience these adverse adversity, you experience tragedy, you experience loss, you experience, threats and significant stress. And to get through that, there is nothing strong about just bearing it down, acting like it's not a problem, because it's going to come out. It's going to come out in alcoholism, violence, stress, suicidality, all of these types of things, antisocial isolation. It's going to come out. So true strength in dealing with mental challenges where we're overwhelmed, where we're dealing with anxiety, where we experience fear. Some of the most profound military leaders in special forces, special operations, people are very aware of the importance of emotional intelligence dealing with adversity. And so those who go into these austere environments, they are taught, these important lessons about hold what you got. Where are you at? Evaluate, breathe, think it through, allow your cognition to continue even in a threatening environment. And there's a huge disconnect between our military personnel and our civilian populace today. So what I like to touch on is really that emotional intelligence piece as we're dealing with people who may not have barely any exposure to adversity. The worst thing that happened in their life was they couldn't get an Amazon delivery within 7 days or something. I mean, seriously, people are living in an era of convenience that's unprecedented and amazing. And they have amazing options for, when we're injured, what doctors and physicians can do. When we have illness, we just prescribe something, et cetera. We're living in a highly convenienced world. So when people are not used to dealing with much adversity at all, and then we're putting these informations out from these protective agencies, not being aware of the emotional intelligent way of communicating with people, of guiding them through emergencies, of guiding them through situations that can lead to them having a sense of crisis. Like, no lie, somebody can have a huge crisis just by going to Walmart and seeing there's no toilet paper and there's no eggs. Oh my God, what is happening? And then their mind explodes because something that's been there their entire life is no longer there, and they've never thought about, how am I going to get these things if it gets difficult? And so for these things to be communicated, there has to be profound emotional intelligence. There has to be an awareness of how people experience mental illness, of how we can prevent people from escalating into crisis by the way we communicate, the timeliness of how we communicate, and using these tremendous options that we have for communication based on internet technology to do the opposite of what you're talking about, where it's done poorly so that it actually increases the fear, increases the anxiety, sends people into crisis because their minds are, totally tweaking. So there needs to be that in that emergency management phase, as we deal with coronavirus, a pandemic, and whatever comes next. There has to be emotional intelligence and empathy based thinking in how we're communicating. That will alleviate a ton of misunderstandings and misconceptions, and it'll actually empower people to get out there and serve in their community in an effective way, where they actually become excited about whatever challenge comes next, whether it's huge or small.
Yeah, you make it a great point about the context of adversity. It's not that the person doesn't feel it, but they don't have any other context. They don't know what, I guess you would say true adversity is. Not that it's not real to them and it's not significant, but our immediate convenience, what do you mean I can't get tacos at 2 a.m? I always can do that. But then you go to a place like, I don't know, Missoula Rock, and there's dead people in the street. The police can't even pick them up. You understand that, hey, adversity comes in a lot of flavors, and ours is pretty sweet,
Yeah. I mean, you do. It's a little sobering to look at our social media feeds now, where people are talking about, the things they're doing on quarantine and how they're frustrated or what they're concerned about. And then I think if, someone from, from some other countries that don't have what we have, they would kill to have what we have during quarantine. So, I think it's very interesting commentary, and I just hope people can develop that resilience so that we can be a more, effective, resilient, and culture that can get through challenging times without freaking out.
Yeah, and I want to get into another aspect, but I also want to say this: that response to adversity, that response to crisis that a lot of us learn. Like, hey, slow down. This won't be over in 3 weeks, so let's not get in a panic now. And almost like as your body ramps up and the fear around you ramps up, just go slower. And
Right.
it just breathe through it, cognate through the automated response, because that's normal. And this is one of the things where, like, military and law enforcement, first responders, we're able to calm down in these moments. Not that we're calm, but calm compared to who's around us, because we've seen this. We understand it. It's not foreign to us. And so we run towards the danger, run towards the help. I like to joke all the time that, first responders are cute, but the first response is self-response. And then it's the immediate response that's around them. And then maybe a minute, maybe 10 minutes later, a first responder gets there third. If I see someone in crisis in some way, even if they've run out of gas in an intersection, in Orange County, that's dangerous. You got too many cars. People are going to get in wrecks. So let's get this person the help they need. And I've seen the fire truck come by, see that there's help there, and then they take off because there's been response. So we can all respond in some way. The other thing I wanted to talk about a little bit is when we understand, that calming thing. Here's what we did last night, and this is a no shit story. I was curious how the Mexican grocery store, literally across the street, major street, but across the street from our home store, how they are responding to all of this, And so we got the groceries that we could get, and we did fine at our grocery store. We were short a couple of things, but whatever. We were totally fine. And so we went across the street, and that place was stocked. Fresh vegetables, a mountain of toilet paper, tons of milk. And it's in part because for whatever reason in that community, whether it's a lack of funds, whether it's something else, there wasn't a run on everything. Now, they were short a few things, but less than 10% of that store was out of stuff. They had everything. And it was hilarious because literally across the street, you could walk across the street and get what you needed in a store if you just slowed down and didn't just panic. And all we did was we went to the Mexican store instead of the regular store.
Yeah, it's definitely something where, to develop resilience that comes from facing adversity and figuring out oftentimes how we respond to adversity poorly. So we can, some of the questions that I'll frequently ask people who are trying to develop resilience is, when something difficult happens to you, does your family like run the other way because they know like you're not going to be like in a good state for a while because something was not going how you wanted it? Or when in a crisis, are people drawn to you for that reassurance, for that calm presence, for that? And that's so important, especially for children during this crisis, is children react to their parents and they see their parents in a different way. They see things, they're so new to this world that we who are older are used to seeing people. We've seen them for 40, 50, 60 years. We're used to that. We take them for granted. The little gestures, the little looks on our faces, the tone of voice. These children are new to this world, so they're still taking everything in, and they have this like hyper awareness of it, pays attention more to all the things, not just language, but way beyond that. When they see their parents nervous or frightened or upset, they read those emotions and then they make their formulation because and they make their thoughts and they let their emotions respond to that, because these are their guiding people. These are the adults in their lives that bring them food, that put them to bed at night, that care for them, and when they're hurt they go to and are their pain is eased. So children respond to this. It's like a virus. It's if you're experiencing fear, unless you slow down, because everyone will experience fear. It's not that you don't. It's just that you experience that fear, or you start to feel that sense of helplessness, or you hear the media events that's articulated in a way where the whole we're all gonna die. And then you have a choice, and especially young people who may not understand that the internet story or the article by the news media is maybe more about them making money off people's fear than it is about actually giving you a fact about the reality. And so children can't understand that or navigate that, or people who don't have an awareness of those realities. And so they can get channeled right into that fear. And then that can that leads to exponential problems. Whereas if multiple people see a few pieces of toilet paper that are not there and believe that they'll be able to find a way to go to the bathroom safely or with hygiene, regardless of whether they get toilet paper at Walmart or not, if they have the confidence and the resilience to say, well, I have options that can solve this problem, that fear doesn't even exist there. Then it leads to the thriving versus that fear that starts to spread through people. And then all sorts of awful things begin to happen based on that fear, based on that sense of helplessness. Shootings, people hoarding items and, taking people's things and looting, et cetera, et cetera. It's all about fear, and it's all about how we respond to it once we experience it.
You talked about emotional intelligence, and when we typically respond to this, I always bring up the cultural intelligence, the CQ, right? There's EQ and there's CQ. And if I was to unfairly define this for the audience, CQ is about groups, clusters of emotional intelligence. So it's not just, your neighbor from another country. It can be a different group of people. The parents whose kids are all in swim versus the parents whose kids are all in baseball. And when you understand how culture works and how it flows, you understand that there's supposed to be what I call miscomfort. It's not that it's uncomfortable. You just don't understand the rules to this. Literally, think of an intersection that has, for cars, that has different rules than the ones you're accustomed to. Like, go to Egypt. Yeah, they have lights and all that stuff, but they don't adhere to the laws like we do. So it's terrifying to go through these intersections until you realize that, hey, these folks do it this way. They get through the intersection. It works here. I need to figure out how to calm myself and go through these things. I think emergency managers are pretty bad at this overall. They don't think about CQ, and so they can't accurately put themselves in the mind of the person and help them to calm that down and slow down and deal with the cultural intelligence with the problems that are in front of them. Now, I'm being unfair. I'm not saying all emergency managers, all state level, county level, I'm not saying that, but just saying as an organization, as a profession, some CQ would really help these guys out in trying to assuage fears, create calm. These are the things like, and by the way, provision and coordinate. I mean, the amount of work that you all do to move the National Guard, to bring in private resources that are promised but never there. Like, you have to actually go put these resources together, activate the plan, and then your phone doesn't stop ringing. And here's the thing too, as much as I'm saying be calm and let's slow down a little bit, you go look at Gavin Newsom. That dude has been up for days. His eyes are bright red. His voice is hoarse. Even the lady's signing like she's got a Band-Aid on her thumb because she's signed so much, So these folks are working hard. And I don't want to make light of that. But that cultural piece, Ben, it's such a big part of what we do. And we never talk about it. We always talk about EQ and don't get into the group style. What do you think?
Yeah, I love that. I love that you brought that up because, and that's the thing. If we talk about a resilience piece, when we talk about crisis, a lot of times crisis is born out of isolation, right? So it's much different if we're sitting in our room alone and we don't have family or we're isolated in some way from healthy influences, right? So if we don't have a connection to another person or another group, we're much more vulnerable to getting in our own head and then cycling off of fear-based media or whatever it is into these negative states that just lead to crisis. But if we have a group of people who, and that's one of the beauties of the social media, and we're talking about social distancing, but we as far as I know, most of us still have internet-based technology. We're able to reach out, and we're able to reach out to cultures that you're talking about who may be a little more seasoned, who may have seen this before, who may have a lot of good insight into these problems that can communicate much more clearly about these issues. And then we can create a culture. We can be proactive about connecting ourselves with a positive, resilient culture that instead of getting in our own mind through isolation, we're connecting with people who are confident, calm, and based on evidence and based on facts. And we can get into a place where we are much more resilient, where the thing that used to freak us out actually has taught us something. And then we can, 5 years later, we look back a lot of the talk about post-traumatic growth is when these troubling things happen, how did it make me better? How did it connect me more? What did it make me reach out for that I had not done before that? And so, during these adverse times, connecting ourselves with these healthy cultures, with cultures that understand, mental health, that understand these feelings and these emotions that everyone experiences, that's normal, it's healthy, that just happened. For us to navigate those with others, that's a profound way to prevent suicide, to prevent mass chaos, to prevent really, mental illness from becoming chronic. Okay, yeah, I'm totally in agreement with you that cultural intelligence is vital.
So one of the things about the cultural intelligence, EQ, the CM, the EM world is getting folks to actually respond too, right? So how do you get the body, the civilian populace to respond in a way that makes sense? And again, if you panic them, if they stampede, and how many times it's a trope in the movies, we can't be honest, the population will go crazy. Well, here we are proving that the thing are going a little bit crazy. And again, not that COVID isn't a significant thing, but there is a legitimate chance, Ben, that less people in the United States will die from COVID than choke each year, because it's 5,000 people that choke to death. And most of them are more seasoned citizens. So, we've got to take prudent measures, but also understand that, we have to do a better job of being calm. Also, we have to understand that our emergency response folks are really they're playing in the blind. This is where I'm going to be fair to you guys. Like, it's hard. If you don't get in front of these things, there's real problems that can happen if it gets out of control. The other problem is there's a cost to that. And the next time we scream fire.
Hey, this is Pete A. Turner from Lions Rock Productions. We create podcasts around here. And if you, your brand, or your company want to figure out how to do a podcast, just talk to me. I'll give you the advice on the right gear, the best plan, and show you how to take a podcast that makes sense for you, that's sustainable, that's scalable, and fun. Hit me up at pete@breakitdownshow.com. Let me help. I want to hear about it.
The other problem is there's a cost to that. And the next time we scream fire, I want to be like, is it a fire though? Is it?
Right. Yeah. I think I really want to touch on what you had said there is it really brings up the reality as you talked about, when these things happen and how do we respond to these things. One thing that I was thinking about was Sebastian Junger document. He talked about how in the book Tribe, about how when these large scale disasters happen, actually a level of mental illness or people with chronic suicidality who are dealing with chronic severe suicidal thoughts throughout their life, their actual symptoms seem to lift in a disaster. Because why? Because they found purpose, they found connection, they're connected with other people who are responding to something that is very serious, and they find a meaningful purpose in their life. Oftentimes disasters do that. Now then later on, there is an increase in crisis responses. People deal with the mental health challenges of the trauma, but that comes later as people experience it. But when it's first happening, such as in World War II, the government thought, oh no, the people are going to totally fold, and as the German bombs and air raids hit England, they thought the people are just going to collapse, and that is not what they found. The people banded together. There wasn't, massive looting. There was an etiquette. There was manners, a new culture that developed of respect for one another, and they actually just banded together, and it was a shock. So during those times, if we talk about tribe, if we talk about mental health and awareness, is the time of the disaster is a massive opportunity to really create a positive network of people who can do great things, and for anybody to be holed up in their house when a need is put out there, it's very profound to see the leaders to say, hey, we need sandbags developed here. And people that used to talk smack or not like each other, in town are suddenly doing this together and building bridges with each other. Seriously, those are some of the stories that our media needs to be covering to give people hope and to help them understand how they can respond in a way where we're effective in what we do. And so that our leaders have people on the ground that are not receiving like fear-based messages of we need this and everything's out of control and blah, 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 blah. Leaders can hear from a sound local source to say, hey, this is what we need. We're good in these ways. We could use this at this time, or it's really ramping up, and we foresee the river, overcoming this bridge in the next 5 to 6 days. We'll need something. But that calm head in an EOC, that's gold. It's that frantic fear and terror that just blocks effective response. So yeah. So
and when Ben's saying EOC, what he is saying in regular people speak is the Emergency Operations Center. There's a bunch of acronyms in the EM world, emergency management world. So don't be thrown off by that. And it turns out these folks really do powwow, and you would be amazed at the collaborative nature of these organizations. As much as I'm critical of them, they, state-of-the-art response is something that a community like LA County, Orange County, are you kidding me? Like if you're some little small, super rural county, it's tough because your jobs include emergency management, manager, water treatment plant manager, whatever. Like you can have literally 7 jobs because there are only so many emergencies. But when that emergency happens, all the other hats come off, and you're the guy that has state level access, national level access to resources in your time of need. So you think about these very, very remote counties, they have people there that are doing their damnedest while they do 7 other jobs to be ready, and God bless them, because that is not an easy job. I mean, Ben, fighting for resources, like these guys are literally fighting for radios, not even like really high-end stuff, because radios are a huge fight.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, I was talking with a guy who works on massive acts of violence responses to schools, et cetera, that have active shooter incidences and stuff like that. And we're just talking about how, from the Columbine forward and the different ways that we've been responding, and how the tactics change and it evolves into these processes. We get better at responding over time. And so to be really proactive about what are the threats that part of this is preparation, right? To know what your resources are in all of these spaces. A local guy who works at who, like you're saying, works at the water treatment plant. His cousin is part of the construction company that handles a number of the resources in the area. Everybody's connected. So it's all of these organizations that are frequently realizing we need to band together. We need to articulate who we are, our purpose. We need to formulate responses, and that makes everybody better. So if as much planning beforehand to prepare for situations, like for instance with COVID, I mean, the closest thing that we've had is a flu pandemic that's similar. What lessons did we learn during that time? And we need to have people who are learning right now today about COVID. What lessons are we learning now? And it's also very interesting to see as AI develops, and as all this data is generated, how AI will help reduce the information overload that people are experiencing. And AI basically, is very terrifying in some degrees, but at the same time, you also see the profound reality of how that can really create from all of this data that we're generating every day into efficient responses based on facts that happened, 10, 20 years ago. So yeah, there's a ton of developments as we face these things together. Fear only gets in the way, but that rational, calm mind that remains calm, that remains in the cognitive state, not the reactive, explosive, emotional state. As we do that, then not only do we handle the present moment and the tactical situation well, but we can strategically plan even during the crisis to be ready for the next one, or to be ready for what comes tomorrow.
Hey, I want to transition into some of the other stuff. We'll get to the podcast. We'll save the good stuff for last, though. You've also written a book. And it turns out not about emergency management, not about being a medic in the military. It's about a baseball player.
Yeah. It's here's a copy of it. It's called Get Up, The Art of Perseverance. With Adam Greenberg. Had the honor of writing it with him. That's him at a pivotal moment in his life. As we talk about resilience, this is part of why I focus on this is, some of what I do is I help create media content that helps people develop resilience. And part of that is hearing from people who have been through awful situations, so that we can get past this kind of way of living where we just kind of run from frightening stuff or run from pain. And we just kind of run after pleasure and just kind of like live in this unbalanced world where we're just trying to like stay safe and not really get into too much that's painful, but like have enough pleasure to keep us happy throughout the day. And then we get into, when we view the world like that, or when we follow a path of living like that, it's a very unstable way of living. There has to be some bravery involved that says there is adversity in life and I can face that comfortably and confidently. And when it does hurt, I do have the strength and the ability to get through that, or a network that can support me as I do that. But largely what I do is I'm trying to tell stories of resilient people, right? And so Adam is certainly he has a very unique story. He was a baseball player from Guilford, Connecticut. He was a gifted athlete. He was just relentless in his work ethic when it came to athletics and baseball. He thrived in soccer. He thrived in basketball, but baseball was something that he chose to really pursue. After having all these colleges come and try to recruit him, and he decided on baseball. And he just invested his life in it. Every day he would do 300 swings a day. He needed to get his bat speed up. He'd go play a baseball game with his high school team. He'd come home and continue to practice. His dad would be like, why is he not, taking a break? Why is he not TV and having a snack and whatever? He'd be out swinging the bat. And so he was just relentless in his work ethic. And he got picked up by Coach Fox at North Carolina Chapel Hill. He played for that organization and thrived there. Went through just this season. His rookie year, at first, he didn't get a hit for a number of months, and then he stuck with it and refused to give up at that point. And there was a series of pivotal moments during his career where he said, I could cash it in. I could just be done with it. Like I've gotten farther than most people, but he kept going because he wanted that dream of being a pro ball player in the big leagues. Flash forward, he gets called up with his buddy. He gets called up. That rarely ever happens to have two friends get called up on the same day. They called him up. Chicago Cubs. Dusty Baker is the manager. Loves this kid. Dusty Baker talked about how when he was playing ball, that Nolan Ryan was pitching and he was throwing at 100 miles an hour and he was wild. And so when the manager looked down the dugout and looked for somebody to pinch hit, everybody became very busy. They were like going to the bathroom, their shoe. They're like, hell no, I don't want to go out there 100 miles an hour and he's wild. But Dusty always wanted that opportunity. Dusty Baker said, I wanted to be the guy. I'll pinch hit. I'll go. I don't care. And I think a lot of our soldiers and things like that. And he was, I believe he served in the Marine Corps Reserves at one point, if I'm correct in my history. But anyway, he saw in Adam that same kind of look of like, I'm in, I'll go. I'm not scared. I'm ready to play. So he calls down in the dugout, needs a pinch hitter, calls Adam up. Adam has his bat ready. He's been waiting. And Adam's getting his first official plate appearance in Major League Baseball. His dream has come true, right? He's spent years and years and years invested, hours every day of his life to get to this moment. He's going out to the plate and steps in the batter's box, takes in the whole scene. This is the pinnacle of his career. He's on TV in a Major League Baseball game for the first time. And the first pitch comes his way, and it's high, and he turns from it. Actually, the ball hits him under the helmet right on his head. This is before concussion protocols. So he goes down. Little does anybody know that it's affected his eyes. I mean, if you have a 92-mile-an-hour fastball that hits you in the back of the head, that's going to affect the elaborate systems within the inner ear and the visual systems where your eyeballs to try to see in a certain way. So that led to a series of tremendous adversity for him, as you have that short window of time to produce, and if you don't, you're gone. He persevered through 7 years in the minors trying to get back, dealing with doctors and coaches and all sorts of adversity, and then made it back in a Miami Marlins uniform for one at bat. just a legendary, really unique story in baseball. So it was an honor to help share his insights into resilience after he experienced that, talked to some major legends in baseball. It was such an honor to help him share his story. He's a phenomenal human being. So anybody that wants some content like that to inspire their young people, the people in their lives that need a story of positivity, would highly recommend you pick up a copy.
No, that's great. I love it. It's a little bit ironic too, because right around the time that he played, there was another Cubs player named Ben Christensen that had been the other direction, where he had, this wasn't when he was a Cub player, it was when he was in college, but he had beamed a batter in the on-deck circle on purpose. And that guy's story of perseverance, Anthony Molina, was blinded. Like you said, it affects the eyes. And it's incredible to see this guy. Gosh, it's been over 20 years now since that happened. And, the weight that someone like Ben carries because of his foolish act, but also, the life-defining moment. And here's what I know from interviewing a lot of these kind of folks is that they're almost thankful, because this adversity forces them to become a better person than they might have otherwise become. I've heard this story a number of times. Lanny Hankins is one of them. He was in the service. He was blinded outside of the service, and he's like this wonderful, magical human being now, in part because he had to go through this experience.
That's right. And so that's why I love sharing these experiences, because we talk about mental health and we talk about young people experiencing this adversity, or we talk about veterans, soldiers, Marines, airmen, people going through these tremendous challenges where it's stressful, where it's traumatic. We so celebrate our athletes. This is like the culmination of, phenomenal heights of accomplishments. To be in that arena itself is to be profound. And as military personnel go into this arena of service, which is extremely unparalleled, where they're able to do amazing things on behalf of others and to be respected for that. And then all of a sudden to have something happen, the IED goes off, the beaning happens, or the knee blows out. All of a sudden you're at this height of experience, and suddenly your world is completely different. And so in that moment, in that series of time to make that transition, it can be very bumpy, it can be very dark and difficult. But you're absolutely right. People who persevere through that and get the help that they need, or orient themselves to that post-traumatic growth, or at least that gratitude processing of figuring it out, they often get to the point where they say, that was one of the best things that ever happened to me. Because Adam will tell you, let's say best case scenario, he's an all-star baseball player. That's great. He entertains an entire world with baseball play, does it at high level, achieves his potential. But would he have been able to help a family where I believe is a 12-year-old child who also in Little League got hit with a pitch in his head, and they find their son in the closet contemplating suicide because he can't hear, he can't play in the band anymore because the sound is so loud, it's affecting his brain in a way where it's overwhelming. He doesn't know if he'll, be able to be the same person that he was, and he's contemplating ending his own life, right? Because of head injury, and he and his family are having trouble processing that. How is that good? Like, does God hate us? What is it? And then the dad reaches out to Adam to say, could you just send a signed baseball card? And Adam is like, hello, I am not going to just send you a signed baseball card. I'm going to meet you. I'm going to meet your son. I'm going to help him get through this. And then they play catch, on a major league or a professional minor league diamond, and spend time together and are lifelong friends. So Adam then looks at that and says, well, what's better, right? All-star career, or the ability to help this family keep their son alive as he deals with the effects of traumatic brain injury, and post-traumatic stress, or whatever it is. And hands down, Adam will tell you, obviously, the choice that he made is, well, if this crap sandwich that happened to me creates that, then that is a sacred and blessed thing that I am honored to have experienced. And not only that, but he gets rewarded by an amazing story of the players of the Miami Marlins who welcome him into that team. So he gets his official at bat 7 years after his injury happens. And they welcome him in. He's not a sideshow highlight. He's not a distraction from the other players. He is brought in, welcomed, embraced, and an entire stadium of people cheering for Adam as he goes to the plate for his official at bat after Matt Liston's campaign to get him an at bat at Major League Baseball to the sound of "Dream On" playing by Aerosmith, and stepping up to the plate after 7 years of suffering. That's what it's all about. That is life at its finest, and that's why people who are resilient create tremendous outcomes and create a finer world. And so that is the honor of my life, to be able to tell these stories and share these realities.
I love it, man. I love it. I love these kind of stories where someone takes it, this challenge, and it turns out, and you don't know this going in. You don't know it going in. There's plenty of stories where the person who's the super practitioner has the adversity and it crushes them. So it's great to have these stories. I wanted to a little bit talk about your podcast too, because you're doing similar work. But tell us about Get Up Nation podcast. Yours truly has been on it. Thank you so much for that. But let's talk a little bit about what you're trying to do with it.
Sure. So the Get Up Nation podcast it's designed to serve individuals, organizations, and societies to develop resilience and perseverance. Obviously, it's generated out of, the book Get Up, but it's creating a nation. It's creating a group, a global network of people who need to find, like you were talking about, that cultural intelligence. So this is kind of creating a network of people who seek out a culture of being resilient, of experiencing that, of when, they're at their end of their rope, they don't see a way out, when they don't understand what's happening, they're totally overwhelmed by challenges, adversity, significant stress, threats, or tragedy. Then they find a network there of positive people who are there to listen, who are there to support and encourage, who are there to share their journey of resilience. We've had a number of guests from business leaders to people who have survived military sexual trauma, sexual assault, cancer, childhood abuse, violence, and combat post-traumatic stress. It's basically across the board, whatever adversity that people experience, whether it's their business as they create a startup, or whether it's a professional athlete whose career gets taken away in a second as they are injured. There's just exploring adversity, what it is, and how people who are resilient get through that as a light for others, so that if they're experiencing it, they can take in some of this content from their hospital bed as they recover in rehab, or as they try to get mentally healthy after dealing with some significant challenges, trying to prevent suicide, trying to empower people to have this kind of mindset that we're talking about, where they can get to the point where the difficult things that happen to them can be those defining moments that have channeled them into a life that they never dreamed or experienced could be that good. So that's what the podcast is about. Having you on the show, your episode will be coming out here real quick. And just I'm out here to try to be a positive force for people as they deal with adversity.
I love it. I mean, it's such a neat thing. You've had some incredible guests. The question everybody always asks me, so I'm going to throw it at you. And you've been at this for a minute, so you've got plenty of guests to pick from. But who stands out? Like when you pull the old one-armed bandit and ding, 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 the name pops up. What name pops up, man?
A number. It's like a flurry of them, but
wait, I didn't just come up the first one? What the fuck's going on here?
There is one that was early on, and I was like, I didn't ever know what I'm doing, and I'm just trying to figure out all the technology, and I'm just trying to, I'm just looking for these stories, and so I see on it was a social media feed, it was on Instagram. There's a young lady who clearly just delivered a child. And the child is on her, the child is here. She's holding this newborn infant on her chest, and she's holding her fist up like, I am strong.
Yeah.
It was just a captivating photo, like, what is this about? Like, what just happened here? And she had delivered this child during pregnancy. they had discovered that she had a tumor inside of her that was basically the size of the child.
Wow.
And because of that, she couldn't receive a lot of the medicines and pain medicines because it would affect the child. So she went through an ungodly amount of experiences where she just literally like refused and just went through it to give her child life. So in that moment, and she recounts it, and her voice trembles with raw gratitude and emotion. And she just shares that when that child was born, and then she just held that child on her chest, and she held her fist up like, I am strong. Like, it was just like this epic, talk about resilience, talk about love, talk about selflessness. That was early on. And that's just that's not a celebrity. It's not
Right.
it's just a person who lives with great love and sacrifice. And that comes the first thought.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. I mean, and that's, yeah, she's a hero, even if no one else knows it. She's done it. She pushes through the pain, sacrifices for the kid and everything else. Yeah, it's such a great story.
If you think of that kid, when that kid grows up and realizes what she did to give him life, just imagine what that kid's going to do.
Oh, man. I know, right? Unstoppable. Yeah. Because mom's going to be like, you could try again. You could dig deeper. You exist. She comes from digging deep. How has the show changed your life? Like, what have you harvested from it? Because one of the things I say all the time is like, monetize my show. I'm already so enriched from it. Like, what else? There's so many wonderful experiences. So how have you grown?
Yeah, it's just tremendous. Well, I've grown in my understanding of technology as I've been trying to effectively get this out to people in a way that, because largely it's conversations with people, and so how can I share that? But especially when I'm rocked by the conversation, where we have the conversation, and I'm like, for the next 2 hours, I'm just like reflecting on when we encounter people like this. We look at our own adversity, and we look at how good we have it, or we think of the ways that we can react better during our adversity. Largely when I was young, I wanted to live a life where I impacted people positively with my life. That's largely based on relationships. That's the way I view it. Is it's all about people. I'm not out to make a gazillion dollars. I would love to do that if it would create if it would create impact, like Bill Gates's type of impact, where he's trying to eradicate polio, and where he's saving lives from people who are dying in third world countries just simply from diarrhea. But the main goal, whether or not there's a lot of money involved or not, is to live life in a spectacular way where we are grateful for every moment, where we connect with amazing people like you. I am so grateful for this moment to talk with you. Just having a network where this starts to expand and explore, where I get to meet phenomenal people who deal with adversity and are empowered by it and grow from it. I grow from it every day. And I'm amazed by all the people that respond to it. I'm so grateful for the people that support it. It just made me live how I want to live, which is amazed and grateful for every moment I have.
I'm going to give you the chance to ask me a question. What's something you want to find out about me?
What do you want to do so that when you, at the end of your life, look back, are ultra proud of how you lived?
Well, I'm doing it already. I've got so many things to be thankful for. And look, day to day, it's always it's always a struggle. But when I look back, I have tended towards kindness, tended towards openness, tended towards all of these good qualities. And, my legacy is not up to me. What I do is I submit the work, and then the legacy is what it is. So I'm not purposeful in that, like, I want to be something other than just a good person who's tolerant, who's kind, who can, hear anybody out. I often have people on the show that I don't necessarily agree with, but my job is not to agree with them. My job is to illustrate them. And so if I continue to do that, I'll be proud of whatever body of work it is. Because, I've made tons of mistakes. I accept that. And I often say I've been a really bad person. But I'm always striving to be a little better, a little kinder, a little more tolerant, and, a better illustrator of things and people.
Awesome. Love it, man.
Hey, man, thanks for coming on the show. That's an easy hour right there. I know everybody's going to love it because you're such a good dude, and people are going to go check it out. Everybody should go to Get Up Nation. Go to getupnationpodcast.com, and you can get a chance to go through the entire palette of shows. There's some really excellent good. Actually, I was listening to the Casey Decker, because I'm always fascinated by pro bull riders, because those people are insane.
Yeah. Oh, there's more coming. There's more coming. So get ready.
Do you hear that excitement? That's what I'm talking about with podcast folks. Like, we're so excited about what we're creating, and we get to do that for a living. So God bless, man. I appreciate you so much coming on. Thanks for staying healthy. Thanks for staying safe. Thanks for helping everybody out. I really appreciate it.
It's been great, man. It's been great. Let's keep in touch.